my friends. Have you ever noticed that life has a strange way of remaining completely silent just before everything changes? For weeks, months, sometimes even years, it can feel as though nothing is happening. You wake up with the same worries, face the same circumstances, and wonder whether anything you've hoped for is actually moving in your direction. Then, almost without warning, one opportunity leads to another. A conversation opens a new door. A financial breakthrough appears. A relationship begins to heal. The pieces that once seemed disconnected suddenly fit together as if they had always been part of the same picture. Most people call this luck. Others say it was simply perfect timing. But what if there is another explanation? What if everything you've been asking for has been moving toward you long before you could see any evidence of it? And what if the silence that made you question yourself was never empty at all? Stay with me, because by the end of this conversation, you'll understand why life often delivers its greatest blessings all at once, why the invisible always comes before the visible, and why becoming the right version of yourself is the very thing that allows everything else to fall into place. One of the greatest misunderstandings we have is believing that progress must always be visible. We assume that if we cannot measure change, then change isn't happening. We look at our bank account, our relationships, our career, or our circumstances, and we let those things decide how we feel about our future. But nature doesn't work that way. Think about planting a seed. The day you place it into the soil, nothing appears to happen. The second day looks exactly like the first. A week later, the ground still seems empty. If you judged only by what your eyes could see, you would conclude that the seed had failed. Yet beneath the surface, everything important has already begun. The roots are forming before the leaves appear. Strength develops before beauty becomes visible. Life is created in silence long before anyone can admire the result. Your own life often follows the same pattern. The problem is that most people keep digging up their own seed. Every day they check for proof. Every disappointment becomes another reason to doubt. Every delay becomes another story about why their dream will never happen. Without realizing it, they interrupt their own peace by constantly asking the same question: why hasn't it happened yet? But perhaps the better question is this: who am I becoming while I wait? That question changes everything, because your future is shaped less by the passing of time and more by the identity you carry through that time. Imagine two people waiting for the same opportunity. One spends every day worrying that it will never arrive. The other quietly prepares for it as though it is only a matter of time. They read, they learn, they grow. They begin thinking like the person they intend to become. Outwardly, both people are waiting. Inwardly, only one is changing. And sooner or later, life responds differently to each of them. This is something most people never realize. Your circumstances are temporary, but your assumptions are continuous. The world you experience tomorrow is deeply influenced by the story you keep telling yourself today. Listen carefully to your inner conversations. Do you expect good things, or do you prepare for disappointment? Do you naturally believe you're supported, or do you secretly assume life is always working against you? These quiet assumptions may seem insignificant, yet they influence the way you interpret every event that enters your life. A delayed email becomes rejection. A difficult week becomes proof that nothing ever works out. A single mistake becomes evidence that you're simply not good enough. But none of those conclusions are facts. They are interpretations. And interpretations are always filtered through identity. That's why two people can experience the exact same situation and create completely different futures from it. One person sees a closed door and decides their journey has ended. Another sees the same closed door and believes a better one must already be opening. The difference isn't the circumstance. The difference is the consciousness meeting the circumstance. Life has an extraordinary way of reflecting the expectations you consistently return to, not because the universe is keeping score, but because your attention naturally searches for evidence that supports what you already believe. If you expect rejection, you'll notice every sign that seems to confirm it. If you expect possibility, you'll begin recognizing opportunities that others overlook. It's like standing in front of a mirror. The reflection doesn't decide what expression to wear. It faithfully echoes the face standing before it. Perhaps life is much more like that than we've been taught to believe. And if that's true, then the most powerful change you can ever make isn't forcing the outside world to become different. It's quietly transforming the person who is looking into the mirror. The remarkable thing is that this transformation rarely feels dramatic. It happens through small decisions that almost no one else can see. You begin speaking to yourself with a little more kindness. You stop assuming every delay is a disaster. You become less interested in proving your worth and more interested in remembering it. Little by little, your inner world becomes calmer. And when your inner world changes, something unexpected begins to happen. The outer world slowly starts arranging itself to match it. That is where everything begins. Most people spend years trying to force life to change, never realizing that life is responding to a version of them they no longer wish to be. They chase new opportunities while carrying old beliefs. They pray for abundance while secretly identifying with lack. They long for lasting love while quietly expecting disappointment. Their words point in one direction, but their inner identity keeps pulling them in another. This is why so many people feel exhausted. They aren't fighting the world as much as they're fighting themselves. Have you ever noticed how quickly the mind creates a story? Someone doesn't return your call, and within minutes, you've imagined 10 different reasons why. A plan doesn't work out, and suddenly, you're questioning your entire future. The event itself lasts only a moment, but the meaning you attach to it can follow you for years. The truth is, your life is shaped less by what happens to you and more by what you repeatedly believe about what happens to you. Think about a river flowing toward the ocean. If you throw a rock into it, the water doesn't stop. It simply moves around the obstacle and continues its journey. But many people treat one obstacle as if it's the end of the river. They stop moving because they mistake a temporary delay for a permanent destination. Life was never meant to be interpreted that way. Sometimes what feels like rejection is protection. Sometimes what appears to be a delay is preparation. Sometimes the door that refuses to open is quietly keeping you from walking away from the one that truly belongs to you. The challenge is that we usually understand these moments only after we've lived through them. That's why trust is so important. Not blind trust that ignores reality, but the quiet confidence that today's appearance is not the final chapter of your story. Every meaningful transformation begins inside, long before it becomes visible outside. Consider a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Other people see nothing but stone. The sculptor already sees the masterpiece hidden within it. Every careful strike removes what doesn't belong until the figure finally appears. Your life works in a similar way. Growth isn't always about adding more. Sometimes it's about removing fear, doubt, resentment, and the old stories that no longer serve you. Every limiting belief you release creates space for a new experience to enter. This is why your daily inner conversations matter so much. The voice you hear most often is your own. If that voice constantly reminds you of your failures, your mind begins accepting failure as familiar. But if that voice gradually becomes more compassionate, more confident, and more trusting, your entire emotional world begins to shift. You don't have to pretend everything is perfect. You simply stop treating every challenge as proof that something is wrong with you. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what is this experience teaching me about the person I'm becoming? That single question changes your relationship with difficulty. You stop resisting every season that doesn't look like success. Just as winter prepares the earth for spring, quiet seasons often prepare you for opportunities you couldn't have handled before. This is why everything sometimes seems to arrive all at once. It isn't that life suddenly decided to bless you. It's that countless invisible changes finally reached the point where they could no longer remain hidden. The confidence you slowly built, the habits you quietly changed, the assumptions you gently replaced, the patience you developed when no one was watching. All of these invisible victories eventually produce visible results. People may call it an overnight success, but you will know the truth. You'll know that the breakthrough began the day you stopped measuring your future by your current circumstances and started measuring it by your inner transformation. And once that shift happens, you begin seeing life differently. You notice opportunities that once escaped your attention. You meet people who seem perfectly timed. Ideas arrive with surprising clarity. The world hasn't suddenly become more generous. You've simply become more available to receive what was already moving toward you. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to force this process. You only have to remain faithful to the person you're becoming, even when today's evidence hasn't fully caught up yet. Because reality has a remarkable habit of eventually reflecting the identity you consistently choose to live from. And when that reflection finally appears, it often feels as though months or even years of waiting have transformed into a single unforgettable moment. Imagine waking up tomorrow without carrying yesterday's fears. Imagine meeting every circumstance with the quiet expectation that life is working with you instead of against you. At first, nothing around you may appear different. The same home, the same job, the same responsibilities, but you would not be the same person looking at them. And that changes everything. Every morning gives you a choice. You can begin the day by remembering every reason to worry, or you can begin by remembering who you are choosing to become. The first few minutes after you wake up are powerful because your mind has not yet become fully occupied by the outside world. Before reaching for your phone, before checking messages or headlines, spend a few moments asking yourself a simple question. If the life I've been asking for were already on its way, how would I think today? How would I speak? How would I carry myself? You don't have to force an emotion. You don't have to convince yourself that every problem has disappeared. Simply become familiar with the version of yourself who is no longer defined by fear. Then carry that feeling into ordinary moments. When you walk into a meeting, when you speak with your family, when you're sitting alone in traffic, when you're making everyday decisions. These seemingly ordinary moments are where a new identity is quietly built. In the evening, instead of replaying every mistake, allow your imagination to revisit the day the way you wish you had experienced it. If a conversation didn't go well, picture it ending peacefully. If fear controlled your reaction, imagine responding with confidence instead. Your mind learns through repetition, and what you repeatedly impress upon yourself gradually becomes familiar. Over time, your inner world begins expecting peace instead of conflict, possibility instead of limitation. Remember, you're not trying to manipulate reality. You're allowing yourself to become the person who naturally welcomes a different reality. Think of a compass. It doesn't create the destination. It simply determines the direction of travel. Your assumptions work the same way. Every thought rooted in confidence, gratitude, and quiet certainty gently points your life toward experiences that reflect those qualities. Every thought rooted in fear and hopelessness points in the opposite direction. The choice of direction is made long before the destination comes into view. Perhaps that's why life's greatest gifts often arrive together. When your inner compass finally points in a new direction, countless experiences begin aligning with that change. One opportunity introduces another. One decision opens several new doors. What seemed impossible suddenly becomes natural. Looking back, you'll realize that nothing happened by accident. The quiet days mattered. The waiting mattered. The lessons mattered. Even the moments that made you question everything were shaping the strength needed to receive what was coming. So if your life feels still today, don't mistake stillness for absence. A seed is not failing because it hasn't broken through the soil. The dawn is not absent because the sky is still dark. The ocean does not stop moving simply because the surface appears calm. In the same way, your future is not standing still simply because you cannot yet see it. Keep choosing the identity that reflects the life you desire. Guard your inner conversations. Treat every delay as an invitation to deepen your trust rather than abandon it. The person you become during the waiting will always be more valuable than the thing you've been waiting for. And one day, what seemed like years of unanswered hopes will unfold with such perfect timing that you'll understand why nothing had to happen sooner. Because everything you've asked for was never rushing toward the old version of you. It was patiently making its way to the person you were becoming. And when the two finally meet, it won't feel like luck. It will feel like coming home.